Welcome to the Best by the Worst. The best movies of all time, reviewed by the worst possible critics. If you don't believe us, keep listening to find out. What do we got here?
Cheers,
Nowhere Man Brewing Red IPA.
Yeah, we should probably add that we also aren't reviewing beers in this, but we probably will talk a lot about beer.
Potentially, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
This is actually delicious, by the way.
It is. Nick gave them to me for free.
Oh.
Actually, I had to work on his car
Yeah,
to
that'll
get
do
them.
it.
So
Not free.
maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't really free.
All right, Barrett, kick us off. Who are we?
Well, we were going to call ourselves the best and the worst, but after very little planning, we looked online and had a quick Google, and there's already a podcast called The Best and the Worst, and they review movies.
However, didn't you say they've been online for like 15 years?
I saw a 15th anniversary episode, yeah. So
Well, my theory then is that they've clearly, over the last 15 years, failed to launch, and they are no longer relevant. They've been unsuccessful, and we are replacing them.
we'll take their place. That sounds perfectly acceptable.
However, for some copyright potential infringement issues that I know nothing about, because I've got no experience in legal anything, I think we just change the name slightly and we call it The Best by the Worst.
The Best by the Worst.
And I think that makes more sense once we actually explain what this podcast is.
Yeah, which I'm really not too sure yet because we kind of just decided to have some beers and record something, and yeah.
Pretty much. So we'll give us some background. This podcast is about our journey that started before we even had the idea of making a podcast, which was to watch every Academy Award Best Picture winner since it started.
Yeah.
And turns out that started in 1927.
Yeah, and it turns out the movies aren't that great to watch from 1927, but we're...
Debatable, but we'll talk about that over the course of the next 100 years that it takes us to watch all these movies.
Yeah. We should also put in a bit of a disclaimer that there's going to be some spoilers in these episodes. If you haven't got around to watching some of these movies in the last 100 years, I think it's your own fault at this point.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to spoil everything. It's very unlikely at this point forward we're going to have spoiler warnings. So, So when we started this journey and watching these movies, we watched the first two and then had a conversation at the pub over pub food and beers, as normal, and realised we should make a podcast detailing our journey. So this is our first attempt to review the very first movie. So full disclosure, we've already watched the first two movies and we're about to watch the third tonight, but we're going to wind it back and start the podcast from the first movie that we watched, which required us to get a bit of information because we'd forgotten half the movie. So we had to retrace our steps a little bit.
It really shows how memorable it was.
Yes. So the name, the reason we chose the name, it's the best movies, so the Academy Award winners, by quite possibly the worst movie critics of all time.
Yeah, we know absolutely nothing about movies.
But we watch a lot of movies.
We do watch a lot of movies.
A lot of movies. And I do think that makes us somewhat qualified to review these movies.
Yeah, I think the beer will help us review them as well. I
Definitely.
think it's going to aid to that a little bit.
So for all of 6 listeners that we actually attract through this podcast, I hope you enjoy our escapade. Oh, okay, so we talked about the name, so we need to talk about who we are.
Yes,
Who are you?
I'm Barrett.
Oh, hi, Barrett.
Who are you?
I'm John. No, I'm actually Alex.
So yes, Barrett has the spaghetti voice and he can't get the words out very well, so you'll hear from me.
Yeah.
Alex has the deep and majestic voice.
That'll be me. And
That'll-
you have the pleasure of listening to me for the next 100 or so movies.
Yeah.
Blessed.
I don't know if we'll make it that far, but we'll try.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, we'll probably die before that happens, but we'll give it a crack. So that's who we are. So Barrett and Alex. We won't put in last names because we don't want to be too famous too quickly and then have our privacy ruined.
Yeah, I don't want to be stalked.
Yeah, exactly. So, but there's
Well,
not too many Barretts out there.
I might be stalked by the right person.
You're married.
Ah, yes. Well, hopefully my wife doesn't listen to this podcast.
Where we are from? Where are we from, Barrett?
We're from Perth, Western Australia.
We are.
Yeah.
Excellent. Hopefully our accents aren't too obvious, but
Yeah.
we're definitely Australian.
There's probably a few Americans confused out there right now thinking we're English.
We are not English.
No, definitely not.
No, definitely not. What are we doing? We've just explained what we're doing. Theme of each episode. Here's something I want to throw at you, Barrett, that I just jotted down without you knowing.
Okay.
So something we picked up on in the first two movies, being from the Roaring '20s, is that they use some slang and some terms that I have either never heard before or hasn't been used for 50 years, and some of it's brilliant. So I think we take some of that slang as a theme of each episode, and we try to use it as often as we can.
So that's a pretty good idea. We are going to run into a small problem, being that the first movie we watched was a silent movie, so there wasn't really too many words to pick up on.
Yeah, I think it'll really take off come the second movie, which was the first one to have dialogue in it.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to scratch that theme with the first episode, but come the second episode, watch out.
We'll probably will have forgotten about that by then.
Probably. So that will definitely be something that we do, but that's a good point. This first movie, we may as well intro the movie. Barry, you want to intro what we watched?
Yeah, so the first movie we watched was made in 1927. It was quickly re-released in 1928. Because it was a silent movie, it wasn't very popular without sound. So they added sound in 1928. Not sound as in dialogue, sound as in sound effects, and they recorded the musical tracks over it. So it had a lot of piano playing in the background and that sort of thing, instead of just being completely silent. It was... did I say the name yet? I don't think I did.
No, you should try.
All right. So the name of the movie was Wings. It was the 1929 winner of Best Picture. All right. The first year they did the award, it was sort of classified over 2 years. So 1927 to 1928 season. I don't know if they had a season back then for movies. I saw that
So the
on the
movie
internet.
was made in 1927, but the official first award was 1929?
The award was 1929, but it was for Best Picture from the movie season. Well, I think season's the wrong word. I'm not good at words again.
Yeah.
But it was for the 1927-1928 Best Picture.
Right.
Back then, it had a budget of $2 million.
So off back then, right?
Well, yeah, it converted to almost today's money. I was too lazy to do it myself, so I used someone else's conversion from 2023. But that was $34.5 million in 2023 money.
Does it take into account 2024's inflation?
No.
It must be 50 million now.
Quite probable. Yeah, you're not wrong there. It was the story of two World War I pilots and their rivalry over a girl. So we've ruined the entire plot of the movie already. But war movie, interesting to think that it was filmed in a time where World War I hadn't happened yet. World War II hadn't happened yet.
Exactly. And that was interesting, right? So we're kind of thinking, which World War is this in? And then we kind of realised there's only one World War it could have been in because the other one hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that's the movie we're going to go ahead and review. The kind of format we've come up for this podcast / disaster is we've gone away and we've put in 5 points each of things we want to talk about, and we'll bring those up with each other and have a bit of a chat and see what we think about each other's points that we found in the movie.
Yeah, I imagine the structure of it's going to be quite chaotic. I've got a lot of random thoughts that jump around throughout the movie, and we'll just see how that goes.
Yeah, mine follow absolutely no structure either.
Yeah, I think that's for the best.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to be reviewing these. But I do think the perfect starting point, and ironically, is the start of the movie, but in particular for this movie, because I thought the opening scenes of this movie were hilarious.
Yes.
Tell us why, Barrett.
Is that your first point or my first point?
It's not my first point, but we've got to talk about it.
It's my first point.
Yeah.
So, just to also clarify, the opening of the movie was fantastic in the fact that we watched a remastered version. It was done really well. But the very first opening scene is every Paramount logo that they've ever had over the last close to 100 years.
Yeah, that
And
was cool.
they sort of ran them back, and by the end of it, you couldn't even tell it was the mountain anymore.
No, you could
It's
not.
just a bit of a squiggly line. All right, so my first point is from the intro. I thought it was pretty funny. The main character, Jack, he's working on his car. I don't know, it sort of starts off with him disassembling a car to turn it into some sort of hot rod.
They don't really explain it, but it's trying to like soup up his car, right?
Yeah, and he gets named the Shooting Star.
Yes.
Well, one of the main girls in the movie called Mary names it the Shooting Star, and she paints a little star on the side of his car for him.
Yep. So we should also introduce, so Mary, she's the girl next door. And by that I mean she literally lives next door, but she's also the girl next door type, if you know that reference. So she's young, pretty, and so clearly from the very start, obviously in love with the main character.
Yeah, Jack.
With Jack.
Yep.
And he's oblivious to it. And how we know he's oblivious to it is the fun part.
Yeah.
Also, we probably should just mention, if you hear any sounds in the background of some sort of churning noise, that's Barrett's dishwasher that is operating in the background that we couldn't turn on.
Well, I've never recorded a podcast before, and when I turned the dishwasher on, I didn't think it was going to be a problem. But quite clearly, it is. All right, so yeah, apologies about that.
So, back to Mary and Dave. So they're working on the car together.
Yeah, they're working on the car together, and basically Mary paints a shooting star on the side of the car because that's what it's going to be named, and she makes Jack turn around while she does it, which is kind of an interesting scene. He then turns around and she does say it, but there's no dialogue in the movie, so you kind of have to lip read it. But they have like these moments where they stop in the movie and they give you about probably 5 to 10 seconds to read a screen of dialogue.
Yep.
And you have to read that quickly, and then they're going to act out the next 30 seconds.
Yep.
So the dialogue goes something along the lines of, if you see a shooting star, or did you know if you see a shooting star, you get a chance to kiss the girl of your dreams. I already got a word wrong. The girl of your dreams, all right? So basically she says this to him, and he goes, oh, really? But you're kind of lip reading it at this point, and he's quite excited at the idea. So he's racing around the car, still doing a few more things. She puckers up her lips, thinking that she's getting the kiss from the guy of her dreams. And then he goes, thanks for that, gets in his car and drives off. And just leaves her standing there with like lips in the full duck face position, or, you know.
It was brilliant. But what's even better is where he went to.
Yeah, he went to another girl's house.
Yeah, he went to another girl's house. So another character, so her name was Mary. No, sorry, Sylvia. Mary's the main one, right?
Yes.
Sylvia. So he picks up Sylvia, who's obviously the girl of his dreams, and drives her off right past Mary.
Yes.
And Mary's standing there like, what the fuck?
Yeah, no, she is not impressed, but not ready to give up yet. I think because she's so in love with him at that point.
Oh yeah, so hopelessly in love. And yep, like Sylvia, pretty girl, Mary, pretty girl, but obviously Mary's the girl next door type, Sylvia is just the girl down the road. So that was a great opening scene. Loved it. Loved it. Okay, Barrett, what's your first talking point?
That was my first talking point.
Perfect, I'm going to give you one of mine.
All right, hit me with one of yours.
All right. So I want to try and capture in some kind of order. We're going to be going back and forth a lot, but I'm just going to highlight something I liked about it that's really surprised me, was the effects, the battle scenes, like the stunt scenes in the planes, because obviously they're pilots, right? So a lot of these scenes take place in planes, and they're shooting down Germans and all the rest of it, and there's some ground battle scenes and stuff like that. But for the 20s, I thought the effects they used were sick.
Yeah, even like the scenes when the planes are crashing it. I don't know if this is how they did it or not, but it almost looks like they took the time to draw physical, like hand-drawn flames coming out of the planes as they crash. Because like the flames are a bit of a different tone to the planes as they're falling out of the sky. But I found that quite interesting as well.
Because you can see they use a lot of practical effects, and that's what makes it stand the test of time, because it actually looks half decent.
It looked fantastic. I don't know what they did to remaster it, but it was, well, not crystal clear because it was filmed like before 1930, but it was pretty clear for the age of the film.
They even had like some special effects that surprised me. When there's a scene later on in the movie where one of the pilots is getting completely drunk, and they're trying to show on camera that he's seeing bubbles, right? Because he's so drunk, and then everyone's like blowing magical bubbles, and the bubbles like look legit, and they're not real. So I don't know if they're drawing them on. I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, no, yeah, he was Pretty cool. And an interesting effect to show that someone was drunk.
Yeah. And like the bar, I guess like the old timey cartoons, you watch the old Disney cartoons, and that's how they would do it, right? The drunks like blowing bubbles and stuff, and thinking, okay, that's how they're portraying it. But I just don't know how they did it in the movie because it couldn't have just been part of the remaster because they're filming that scene, so there were bubbles before. Maybe the remaster made the bubbles better.
Oh, it was 100% embedded. That has to have been in the original footage.
So I don't know how they did it. I really don't.
Yeah, they almost actually lost the movie. I saw on the internet. I was Googling before. Well, they lost the copy of it.
How do you lose a copy of it?
Well, Paramount, or someone asked...
Carrier pigeon.
Someone asked Paramount for it, and they were like, well, we don't have it. And then they had to go searching for it. So it's lucky that we got to watch it at all, to be completely honest.
Especially with such a big production for its time, right?
Well, yeah. Yeah, it may have won Best Picture, but we lost it.
So I'm going to throw it out there. Something I didn't like, though, was the no dialogue bit. You mentioned it, how it's, they kind of stop, show some writing, and then they continue on the story. So you get used to it watching it, but it's tedious, right? It's very tedious in terms of their ability to tell a story because it made the movie over 2 hours long. And that, in today's standard, isn't a long movie, I guess, but given this movie and the storyline is actually quite short, right? And just to summarize the storyline, really, it's about these two pilots now. So there's Jack and the other pilot is David, right? They don't know each other at all. So Jack's more working class. He was the one fixing the car at the start. David comes from a wealthy family. But what ties them together, what connects them is Sylvia, the girl that that Jack ran off with at the start in the car and left Mary for dead. So it turns out that Sylvia is a bit of a whore, and she's playing Jack and David off each other in a pretty obvious way. Do you remember those opening scenes? So he's driving off with Sylvia, who's totally interested in Jack, and then it cuts to David introducing him as a character, and she's obviously been seeing David for probably an even longer period of time.
Oh, 100%.
And they're both just completely mesmerized by Sylvia, that they're just oblivious, I think, to the presence of each other. And even when they are, they don't realize, okay, Sylvia's just playing us, and it turns into more of them competing against each other for Sylvia's affection, which I guess probably is a sign of the times, right? Like that's probably what they did back then, trying to win the girl. I guess, I don't know, at today's standard, it would just be like, well, Sylvia's a bit of a fuck girl, and move on.
I don't think they had that term back then.
Well, it's interesting. I think Sylvia might have been the first one to be captured on film.
The first fuck girl on film.
Yeah. So that's how those two main characters are connected, right? But go on, Barry, what's your next point?
Well, my next point. All right, so I don't know if I should be bringing this up so soon, but one of the other interesting things I found about the movie, straight after the bubble scene, there was a little bit of nudity.
Oh, the nudity.
It was. It has to have been, like, if you talk about the frames of the movie, the nudity has to have been 3 frames long in like a 30 frame per second movie.
And you know how we know this, because we went into this movie thinking, just a caveat on this, so another theme of this podcast is if there's any nudity, we're going to definitely highlight it and talk about it at great length, probably for most of the podcast, because that's just how it should be. But we weren't expecting any nudity from a movie from 1927, that's for sure.
No, definitely not.
When this scene happened, so we'll just describe the scene. So basically, again, this one of the pilots, it was Jack, he gets super drunk, and it's after, they've kind of had a successful mission, and gets super drunk, and Mary, who also enlists and joins the army, honestly just to chase after Jack, finds him and Jack doesn't even recognize who Mary is because he's so blind. And then she basically carries him off to where he's staying in the hotel to let him sleep it off. And there's almost a moment where it kind of looked like, is she going to take advantage of him?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how they framed the scene. It's like, oh, this is spicy. Like, what's going to happen here? You certainly couldn't have it the other way around, but it was kind of leading into that. And then
it was the 30s. It probably could have been portrayed the other way around.
That's a good point too. But I'll touch on that because I thought the portrayal of women in the movie, actually, especially around Mary's character, was surprisingly, modern. But we'll get to that in a second. So he's laying on the bed, completely passed out, and she's like, "Oh, I can't do anything with him. He's too drunk." And then she's trying to get changed, and she's taking her clothes off because she's in a different uniform. She put on the dress to try and attract him, right? Just trying to put a uniform back on.
Yeah.
And these two guys walk in the room because they're trying to tell all the pilots that they need to go back to active duty because there's about to start this big battle and things are about to kick off again. And they walk in and are getting changed. And then I'm sitting there thinking, I think for a moment of a second I saw her boobs. And you weren't too sure. I mean, you're blind at the best of times, so we couldn't trust your eyesight, that's for sure. And I think Barrett, I think there were boobs there. So tediously, we went back through the frames.
This doesn't sound creepy.
We had to know. And sure enough, there's like a frame where you see her naked.
Yeah.
Well, we see her boobs.
Yeah. So I wanted to know a little bit more about this. So I had a bit of a Google around the movie because surely this wasn't a common thing for the time. And it turns out that Wings was one of the first widely released movies to show nudity.
I believe that. It had to have been.
And promptly, very soon after that, it was actually shut down. So they brought out a rule in, I think it was about 1930.
What?
That you weren't allowed to have nudity in a movie anymore.
No, they didn't.
They 100% get on your phone and Google it. It was, I don't know, this guy made this rule, I don't know. It was enforced just after 1930 or something around there, and it ran through, I think I saw until about 1960, when they released classifications for movies. So essentially they said, you can't have nudity in movies because movies are for everyone. But in 1960 they said, oh no, we can segregate movies into categories and say...
I'm giving this a goog. I'm checking this. I refuse to believe that because what you're saying is if that's accurate, then there's not going to be any nudity for the next 30 movies.
Well, maybe it will sound less creepy. Doing a podcast.
Potentially. Okay. I'm going to fact check this. In the meantime, we should probably actually cover the storyline of the movie. So we talked about how those two main pilots are connected through Sylvia, and they're obviously both enlisted to join the army.
Yeah.
And maybe talk about the storyline one.
Yeah, I guess so. From that point in, they both enlist not into the army, Alex, into the Air Force because it is Wings, a plane movie.
Sorry. Okay.
All right. So they both join the Air Force, and they both go off to do, I guess, like boot camp or training camp together.
Training, yeah.
And they're kind of aware that each other exists, and they don't really like each other because they're both interested in the same girl.
Yeah.
And a lot of, I guess, challenges and conflict happen during that boot camp scene, only to be, I guess, come to height in an all-out brawl. Right, they have a big fist fight, and
a fist fight from the 20s, which was proper like fisticuff style.
yeah, like the elbows are down low, the fists are up high. There's a lot of swinging and carrying on. Essentially, they have a big fight, and then they become best friends. All right,
They do.
but a spicy little piece of information that hasn't been spoken about yet is that in one of the early scenes, No, it's not David. It's Jack. Jack goes to visit Sylvia, and he sees a locket on her desk,
locket.
right? And he assumes, so the locket has a picture of her in it, and he assumes it's for him to take to war with him. When all reality, the locket is for David, and on the back of the photo, it says, to David.
Yeah.
Or something like that. A gift for you, David,
yeah.
to remember me by.
That was spicy.
So Jack's, for the whole movie, wearing this locket around his neck with a photo of Sylvia in it, with a caption on the back that says it was intended for David. All right, so it's like that's playing out. So then they've become best friends, but he's still got the locket, and that'll come into play a little bit later. We'll close out that once we get to that part of the story.
Oh, yeah. Spicy. So I just did a goog, and you're not going to believe this, but Barrett is right. And I say that not to you, Barrett, but to the listeners. So listen to this. So saying here, like the Catholic Church and other people had influence over the movies because they were, corrupting minds and whatnot. And they said, that they brought in a thing called the Hays Code. Hays Code to restrict what they were showing, especially around nudity. That was enforced from 1934 until the early 60s. So the Hays Code was so strict that even the display of cleavage was controversial. So you're right, if cleavage was controversial, then they're not going to be showing any nudity. Wow. That changes everything.
Are you disappointed?
A little bit, but I mean, we had a strong start. And look, at the end of the day, who's to say that, the movie had that won the Academy Award for Best Picture had nudity in it anyway? We could have gone 30 movies without there being any just because of, artistic direction. So.
Well, yeah, I honestly didn't think it was going to happen this early, if I'm completely honest. I didn't think it would happen until the 60s.
Wow, yeah. So just a lot of constraints that was enforced in 1934. So I think it came in the 1930 or something, but it wasn't enforced until 34. And then, led to a lot of movies being cut and edited to fit within there. And wow, that's wild. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's so disappointing. So before we continue with the storyline, though, we should bring something up that kind of tripped us out a little bit and that we weren't expecting. So you don't so much see Jack, so the guy from the very start of the movie, the working class pilot, or becomes a pilot. You don't really see his family, right? There was nothing about his mum and dad or anything like that I can recall, because the scene just opens up with him and the girl next door, Mary. Doesn't talk, you don't see his family, right?
Yeah.
But for David, who comes from a rich background, you do. There's actually a really long scene with him, with his mum and his dad, who's in a wheelchair, which I made a note of, isn't explained at all. He's just in a wheelchair, which is fine. Nothing against him being in a wheelchair, but it just seems like they would explain it, but they didn't. And that scene goes on for a long time. They're all very upset that he's going to war, all the rest of it. Things you would expect to see, kind of letting his son go off to war, right? But I don't know if you remember, but you remember what happened in that scene?
Sorry, no, I don't. I'm also messaging my mother-in-law at the same time because she just went to the shops. Well, she said she's going to the shops, and she said, "Do you want anything?" And you know what I said?
Snacks.
No. Oh. Well, now I should say snacks.
These snacks.
No, I told her to get mini ginger beer cans.
Oh, yes. So just for everyone's knowledge, whenever I come to Barrett's house, which where we're located now, he always keeps a stock of mini ginger beer cans in the fridge. And it's kind of like trained me now to always inspect his fridge when I'm over. He's been slowly training me just to search for ginger beers. It's this sort of sick, twisted Barrett game.
Yeah, well, I've run out lately, so...
Restocking.
Yeah, she said she's going to get some from the shops for you, so you'll be a happy boy again.
Excellent. So back to that scene. So when he's like saying goodbye to his mum and dad and dog, which I really like because they put a lot of focus on him saying goodbye to his dog.
That was a long
really
scene.
cute.
The whole goodbye scene was insanely long.
Right, but just as he's about to go, he's like saying goodbye to his mum, gives her a bit of an embrace to go for a hug, and then they just completely pash on the lips.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
What was that about?
I don't want to talk about it. It's a bit
You
weird.
blocked it out.
Yeah. I had to erase that from my mate. I had erased that from my mind.
Yeah, so when it happened, it kind of threw me and you out. We looked at each other like, what's going on there? I don't know if that's something that was okay or normalised back then. Any listeners are, 100 years old, maybe you can explain it, but it wasn't like a peck. Like it was a proper smooch on the lips.
Yeah. There could be a listener out there that's 100 years old. I heard the oldest man just turned 110, born in 1912.
So it's possible. He might have gone to the movies
possible.
to see it.
Maybe he could have seen it at the movies.
But
that
if
baffles
anyone
me.
has seen this movie in theaters when it came out, and for some reason you're listening to this podcast, or your great granddad has watched it at the movies, please find out and let us know immediately.
Yeah, call us on Alex's phone number, which is...
No, don't do that. In fact, I don't know how you're going to reach out to us. I don't know, a comment of some kind.
A comment on what? We don't have any kind of platform. We should look into having a platform.
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
All right.
So that scene tripped me out, but we moved on from that. All right, what are we talking about next? The rest of the plot?
Well, yeah, I've got another 3 points to go through. It's your turn to bring up a point.
I just talked about the kiss in the mouth.
Ah, well. Okay. My next point I wanted to bring up was it's probably similar to what you brought up about how well the movie was shot and the real effects, but also on the Googles, having a bit of a look at the information from the movie, I saw the battle scene. Okay, so there was a big battle scene towards the end of the movie, planes flying over, infantry running everywhere. There was 3,500 actors in that scene.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of extras.
Yeah. No wonder they spent $2 million making the movie. But yeah, 3,500 people. All right, so that was an interesting fact.
Wow.
And what was it? I saw on there also 300 pilots to make the movie as well.
Wow.
Like huge numbers. All right.
Well, those air scenes, like we said, way back when, that was like they were really impressive scenes. Like they were obviously flying real planes, and professionals were flying them, and it was really well shot.
Yeah, I think we're just going to have to roll into my next points because they just
Keep
all
going,
kind
keep
of
going.
roll up into one. I'm kind of sorry. Do you know, during the making of this movie, they once waited 18 days for the correct clouds to be in the sky?
What? Why?
Okay, this is pretty funny and maybe a little bit hard to understand potentially. So I'll try and explain it. But if you think about like filming something that else would have been filmed around that time, a horse running across a field.
Yeah.
You can tell how fast the horse is running because the background's moving. Okay?
Right, yeah.
You see a plane flying through the sky, there's no background. It's just blue on a clear day.
Oh, so you've got like no sense of how fast it's moving.
Yeah, so they had to wait for the perfect day where they had the right amount of clouds.
Yeah.
Because it had to be a perfectly clear day to get the shots. But it also had to have the right clouds in the background, so when the planes are darting around each other, they actually look like they're traveling at speed, which they were.
God, how
because
long
all
did
of
it take
these
to make this movie?
That's my next fact. You're stealing all my facts. It took them 9 months to make this movie.
That's a long shooting time.
Yeah. At the time, a normal time to produce a movie was 1 month.
Wow.
So this took 9 months to film. It took a week to film that inventory
And
scene.
you know what? It shows because as much as, some things annoyed me, and I'll touch on them, so no dialogue, frustrating, but, nothing they could do about it. That was the tech at the time. Runtime, annoying, like it was a long movie for, relatively limited storyline, but obviously having no dialogue meant it took a lot longer to get it across. But it was seriously impressive, like how they made the movie in terms of the effects and the war scenes and the battles, and especially the air scenes, obviously being a movie about pilots, where that part there was actually engaging. I'm like, oh, this is good. Like I've seen a lot worse.
Yeah, I guess the only downfall, and you've brought it up, is the no dialogue. If you look away from the screen for even 2 seconds, there's a chance that you're not going to have enough time to read the dialogue that's on the screen, and you will miss a major piece of the movie plot. Which is like an interesting thing, because normally if you look away from the screen for 2 seconds, maybe someone does something or you look across, normally you can keep listening with your ears and just turn straight back. Like 2 seconds is not a long time.
Yeah.
But that could be like the difference between you understanding what's going on and not understanding. I think there was a point in the movie where you were like, what's going on? And I was like, I think you just missed.
Yeah, I would have been checking my phone,
Yeah.
sending a message, and I don't know what was going on.
Yeah, so I had to like stop it and explain what was just said so you could stay in sync with the movie. It's actually quite difficult to watch
Yes.
and required a lot of attention. So
And maybe that goes into my next point, maybe around that topic, is the fact that there's intermission in the movie.
yeah,
Right?
how cool was that?
Yeah. So halfway through the movie, so it's about just over 2 hours long, so about an hour, whatever in, there's a slide that comes up that normally they reserve for the dialogue, and it just says intermission. And there's like, a couple minutes where that slide...
I think it was at least 30 seconds long. It just
Yeah.
sat there intermission. Like you had time to pause.
Yeah. I'm
And
guessing in the theatres it's probably a lot longer, right? Like you go out there, you go to the bathroom, you go get snacks, like the old school intermissions.
Well, they couldn't pause it back then either. I don't have you.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't know if you've. Okay, so completely side story.
Yeah.
But there's my granddad.
Yeah.
When he was younger, was really into technology.
Yeah.
Okay, so he had like one of the first video cameras. I actually have it here somewhere. It shoots on 8mm film.
Yeah.
And you wind it up and you hold it, and it shoots like individual photos on a reel of 8mm film.
Yeah.
And then you get that developed, and you can watch it as a movie. So there's like movies of my mum
Oh.
as a little girl, like running on the beach and getting knocked over by a wave and stuff like that. But
How old are you, Barrett?
thank you. But yes, like this is a home movie from the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Around then.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. And as a kid, I found some of these movies and I decided to watch them because my gran had the projector.
Yeah.
And the projector was a little bit hit and miss because of its age. and occasionally would get stuck. And as soon as it got stuck, the lamp is that hot that you just watch the whole picture melt in front of your eyes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they couldn't have paused this movie. It would have must have got to the intermission screen, and then they must have turned off the projector and then started on the other side of it.
Well, we're no experts, but I'm going to take that as the truth. That's accurate. You've heard it here first.
That's definitely how movies were made.
Definitely.
It's
I believe it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I actually really like the idea of intermission. I mean, I was thinking about it when it happened. I thought, what's really annoying in today's movies, and we'll get to them eventually when we review another 100 movies, but I find movies are getting longer and longer, right?
Yeah, and you don't have
These
time to check
big
how many followers you
blockbusters.
have.
Exactly. But when you're sitting through a 2.5-hour movie, sometimes even longer, right? You know, you have to make a decision halfway through that movie. You need to go and take a pee. You're going to miss something in the movie. And you're just trying to work out which part you're going to miss. You're like, oh, I'll wait for an action scene, and then I'm not going to miss any storyline, but then you're going to miss something cool from the action scene. Or do you wait till the action scene's done and risk missing a part of the storyline? And then what are you going to do? Ask the person next to you what's happened? You can't. It's too loud. It just doesn't work. But the intermission allows time to go to the bathroom, go get some more snacks, talk about the movie so far. If you miss something, maybe someone explains it for you, right? What a great concept. And somewhere along the way, we just lost it. Well, I know when we lost it, 1929.
Well, it wasn't. There was no intermission in the second movie.
No, there wasn't.
We're not allowed to talk about that yet.
Yeah, we're not. But
That's in the future.
I don't know. Like, I reckon there's a case to be made that having intermission is not a bad thing.
Yeah, 100% agree. Bring it back. Bring back the intermission.
You heard it here first.
Do you know what
Bring
else
it
we
back.
didn't do?
What?
We sat there and watched the intermission screen for 30 seconds and then just kept watching. We didn't actually stop. We didn't abide by the rules of the movie.
Well, that's also because we weren't expecting it. Like, if you know there's intermission coming, then you prepare for that. Like, you hold your bladder, you don't go to the toilet, you don't have to press pause. Like, you just, okay, I'm just going to wait for the intermission, I can go and do what I need to do.
Yeah.
Right? Well, we fix movies. We're
Yeah.
going to include intermission.
Let's
That
move.
would be a cool idea, some kind of, like, app, you know, where it brings in, like, a proper intermission to your movie so you don't have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you could...
I have nothing for that. That is a fantastic idea.
I mean, you could just press pause, but let's not get into semantics.
Copyright that right now. You
will.
know law, right?
Yeah, I know, Lil. We're copywriting that.
Yeah.
That counts.
That's our idea. First. Don't steal it. Don't steal our ideas.
All right, so I feel like storyline-wise, we captured, what, half the movie?
I guess we're up to that point. We're kind of like, we spoke about the romance,
Yep.
them going to war,
Yep.
them going through boot camp,
Yep.
and I guess we're kind of up to the point where some of the battle scenes start.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of storyline from there, they obviously started as rookies and then they win a few battles against these German flyers and, you know, they put themselves up in glory. And so both Jack and David are like esteemed pilots at some point, right? It doesn't really tell you how much time has passed in the movie, but clearly they've been through a few battles, must be a couple of years into the war, because by like the second part of the movie, when they're like getting to the climax of the end of World War One, you know, they're obviously reaching World War One at the end of it, so they've at least been in the army for a few years. So, but at that point, they're esteemed pilots. They're great friends. You know, the Sylvia part's about to bubble over, but they don't know it yet. So what happens next, Barrett? Take it away.
I'm struggling to remember here. I might have to jump on the Google box to
Give it a
find
Goog.
out. But who was the famous German pilot?
Oh, yeah, they did. So they encountered in a few battles this like legendary German pilot. And they kind of said how like he took down heaps of planes of the Allies and all that sort of stuff. And he was still alive at this point, right? Like, so he's still floating around, and they kind of show him, and you know that these two pilots can't best him yet. I even recall there was like a scene where he had an opportunity to shoot one of them down. I don't know if it was Jack or David, but because their gun jammed, there was almost like this professional courtesy that the German pilot was like, I won't shoot you down because your gun jammed. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
Which, I don't know much about World War One, but something tells me if you had an opportunity to shoot that guy down, you'd probably take it. But
Yeah, I don't know if this is Adolf guy. I think this is him here.
was he supposed to be awful like a real life person? I don't know. I think he's just a fictional kind of gun pilot, like for the Axis powers or whatever.
Yeah, potentially. This guy was from World War One, though.
Maybe it's even if it's not him, they're basing it on someone like him, right? So he's still floating around, and then he comes relevant again when it hits like the final battle.
Okay, so this guy's name is Adolf, and his nicknames is Dolfo.
What a great nickname!
Yeah.
All right, so they're going through that. Do you remember the rest of the movie?
No.
Oh, great. I roughly remember it. So at that point then, they're getting towards like the final battle. Before that final battle happens, the scene where they discover the locket happens. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So I guess they kind of find the locket and I'm just trying to remember exactly how it plays out. They're in the tent. Well, they're in like a military style tent. The locket's there. I'm pretty sure the locket gets like knocked off a bench or something and splits open, and the photo falls out.
Yes.
And when the photo falls out, you can clearly see on the back of the photo that it was for David and not for Jack, even though it was Jack's locket that he accidentally took from Sylvia.
Yeah.
You know, you've heard the whole backstory at this point.
Yeah. Because they became good friends, right? But at that point,
Yeah.
they still had their own versions of who's going to get Sylvia and who Sylvia actually likes, because she's been playing them for fools for that whole time, right?
Exactly, yeah. So they're trying to, I guess, so in an act, David is trying to protect Jack from finding out that the locket was actually for him.
Yes.
So he picks up the photo of Sylvia and he's like, give it back. And he's like, not giving it back. And then David tears up the picture in front of Jack. And it cuts him really deep. That pretty much starts like a spiral of them having a big fallout towards the end of the movie.
Yes.
Which is an interesting thing to add in.
That's it. And so they get into some big air battle, right?
Yeah.
Leading to this big end battle. I can't remember what the battle name was called. Probably important, but anyway. And then they're doing well, but David gets shot down over like German territory, right?
Yeah. He gets shot down over German territory. Interesting side note. When I was like doing a little bit of research about this, of all those pilots, they had 300 pilots in the movie.
Yep.
Stunt people, because obviously David crashed and they filmed like the plane crashing.
Yeah, you can see it crash.
Yeah, so one of the stunt pilots broke his neck, fell out of...
Oh, no.
I don't think that's a laughing thing. So in a controlled crash, they called it, he broke his neck, and another one of the stunt pilots was killed. So, yeah.
Wow. Spicy.
Yeah, it is. But anyways, so David crashes his plane and he's deep in German territory.
Yep.
And it's kind of like Top Gun reminisce.
It's literally the plot of the second Top Gun movie, Maverick.
Yeah.
Where he's behind enemy lines and he runs into an enemy base camp and steals one of the German planes.
I reckon that's where the idea came from.
I think so. They stole it.
Instead of like picking an F-14 from some enemy base, he picked a enemy German biplane. All right? And
brilliant.
Made it, started flying that back. And the Germans were not happy that he took the plane.
They
were
happy.
Shooting guns and I presume it was flak back then. That's what they called it in World War II.
Yep.
Basically, the projectiles, they'd shoot up into the air and it'd explode, sending like really hot, sharp shrapnel in all directions.
Yes.
All right. So they're trying to shoot him and he's flying around. He gets away.
He does.
Is he shot at that point? I think
he was wounded.
He was wounded, yeah.
Yeah. I think while he was still like crashing, flying the plane, he got hit by a bullet in the shoulder or something. So, because he was evading like the Germans for a while on the ground before he stole that plane, right?
Yeah.
How you going for a beer, boy?
I've run out. Should I?
Yeah, we need beers.
Yeah, all right. Hang on. Just give me one moment.
I'll give you guys some intermission music. Doodle-doo-doo-doo-doo. See, we need intermission in podcasts. We need intermission.
Do you want another one of those?
Yeah, sure. Send it.
I've got exactly the right amount left.
Perfect. Podcast beer.
Also, podcasting rule:
Yeah.
don't talk when you're 10 meters away from the microphone.
Yeah, we'll have to trim that out later. Yeah. All right. So David, he's stolen the plane. He's flying back. We're thinking, holy heck, he's made it out of there. Meanwhile, while this is all happening, Jack's under the impression that David crashed and died. And the big air battle ensues, and he takes down that German ace pilot, right?
Yeah, yep.
So that all happens. And then at that point, like, everyone's high-fiving, we've won the war, blah, blah, blah. And then David's trying to fly back that German plane back to, friendly territory, right?
I don't even know where the movie's shot.
No idea. We should probably know that, but we don't.
Yeah.
So he's trying to fly back. Anyway, in the air, encounters Jack, who's also flying back. And Jack thinks that there's another German flying towards, our towns and stuff like that and our bases. So he shoots down David.
Yeah.
David's like begging, don't, it's me. Obviously with the little things coming up saying, Jack, it's me.
The little dialogue box of concern.
Yeah. Concern. Yeah. David was real concerned.
Yeah.
So had no ways of communicating and shoots him down and he crashes into some little nearby French village or wherever the hell they are.
Straight into a house.
Yeah, straight into a house.
Yep.
They pull him out of the plane and the little villagers are trying to care for him. Anyway, meanwhile, Jack lands his plane because he's trying to take a trophy.
Yeah, he wants the fabric from like the tail section of the plane.
Yeah.
I don't know, what was it called? It was pre the swastika. It was
No, it was just the
cross, like whatever the German cross was.
Yeah. The swastika before the swastika.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Swass, not swass.
And as he's doing that, he goes inside like the broken house and realizes that it's David.
Yeah, and he realizes he shot his best friend down.
Yeah, they put their shit aside over Sylvia. I don't want to say that Sylvia's responsible for all this, but you guys be the judge. And anyway, so they have this big emotional scene, and David dies.
It really put a bit of a turn on the movie, to be honest, because I guess it started off really funny, right? With the wanting to kiss the girl. No, the girl not wanting to kiss the girl, I guess. Then it went kind of serious with the parents saying farewell to their son. Then it went kind of like, I guess, like the two people battling at boot camp.
Yeah.
It took like a different dynamic. Then it went to the war. They were best friends. Then they had a falling out. And then all of a sudden, one of them's killed the other one. It was I reckon that was the first plot twist.
Well, we'll go with it, sure.
You heard it here first.
So, poor David dies. Jack's all cut up. Anyway, then it kind of cuts to them back at home, right? So a few things happen of note. Main ones that I can remember were Jack going to David's parents' house and telling him that, hey, I think they already knew he was dead, but it was more like saying, look, I was responsible kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they sort of just tell Jack, it's not your fault, it's the war's fault. And, they hug it out. Don't make out with the mum, which was a nice touch compared to what David did at the start. And that was that part. And the other main part was fucking Jack woke up and realised that Mary was in love with him and that, at that point, suddenly loved Mary. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which it's, if you look at the the cover of the movie, it's those two hugging each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it took a long time for that piece to come right around.
We kind of just mentioned it in a few different ways, but like when he went off to war, Mary was just so infatuated with Jack that she enlists and she's like a driver or a truck driver or something in the army. I'm not too sure what women could do back then.
Well, they could do anything. We need to clarify that. It was what they were allowed to do. I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
That
and like follows Jack throughout the war, right? And then when they finally get back home is when he finally wakes up. But I actually thought, like, her character, when we're talking about strong female characters, well, they had her fixing the car, they had her enlisting into the army, and she contributed.
Yeah.
Like I thought she was portrayed, especially for the 20s, as like a pretty strong character.
Yeah, I really like that. And when he comes back from war as well, I don't understand now in my brain thinking back on this how it exactly played out. But he comes back, she's been at the war as well, but she somehow looked after his car for him, the Shooting Star, and it's been under a car cover all this time.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a bit of a hole in the plot, right?
Well, I think also because they don't touch on, Jack's family at all. He's just like there with the car and she's next door. But where's Jack's family?
Well, his family is the car.
Well, we'll have to go with that, won't we?
I think that's how it plays out.
But how does the movie end? You don't remember, do you?
No.
So
this was 2 weeks ago.
We need to
record this podcast moments after watching it.
Sorry, everyone. I forgot that Barrett's got mush brain.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll fill in the blanks. So, Jack and Mary, they finally embrace. They finally like kiss and all that sort of stuff. Like, yeah, I've woken up. You're the girl for me. And just before they kiss, the shooting star comes across the sky.
Ah, I do remember now.
Full circle,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then kisses Mary.
Yeah,
And then it's like that.
pretty good ending to a movie.
So that was it. And you know what? Like, decent movie.
It was decent.
A bit slow in the dialogue, but everything else was strong.
Yeah. Just it's a classic ready to be destroyed by modern Hollywood.
Oh, absolutely. I'm surprised we were even able to watch it. So, any final thoughts on the movie, Barrett?
Look, maybe we should include in this this monstrosity that we're calling a podcast. We should probably maybe think about including some sort of rating.
I was just thinking that. So,
What's it out of?
5 stars. And
5 stars.
I
I can do halves.
So that's how it has to be, I think, or it's going to get too messy.
No, I should make it out of 100 and just make it really, really confusing.
It's kind of weird that we're making a podcast about reviewing movies, but we didn't even come up with the whole rating system or rate the movie before we got in here. So out of 5 stars, I'm going to ask you, Barrett, how many Barretts do you give this movie?
3.5.
3.5.
3.5. I think 3.5 stars, given the fact of how old it is, how well it was shot, all right, it would probably... Look, I'm not saying it would get a higher or lower rating with or without dialogue. I think it was good. It was okay without dialogue. It would have been better with dialogue. But I still think it was a solid movie. Maybe it's even touching a 4. I really enjoyed this one. It had a solid story.
It did. I think for me it's 3 stars. Like, I really appreciate what they're able to do with it. But at the end of the day, you just can't shake, I guess, that we're used to just a lot more excitement and action and spectacle from modern movies, right? And this did everything it could at the time, and I appreciate it for it. But it's getting 3 stars because I appreciate the effort what they were able to produce at the time. But at the end of the day, I was still a little bored.
Oh man, not as bored as the next movie.
I don't even want to get into that yet, man. I'm not ready. My body's not ready.
We're going to have to discuss how long the podcast's going to be for the next movie.
Yeah.
Look, if a movie scores under 1 star, do we just play a minute of elevator music and not review it at all?
No, we just came up with the rating system, and you've already rated the next movie. We don't even know yet.
I don't know, yeah. We haven't watched it yet.
All right, so to conclude, Wings, 1929, the first inaugural Academy Award Best Picture winner. Alex's rating, 3 stars. Barrett's rating, 3.5 stars.
3.5 stars, yeah.
I like it. It's a solid watch. Would recommend. And I think that concludes our inaugural episode.
Yeah.
Wow.
We managed to jibber jabber for almost an hour.
We're good at that. I can still jibber jabber, but we don't want to punish our poor audience.
No. How many listeners do you reckon we have at this point? How many people have got to this part of the podcast?
Oh, I would say no more than 100,000.
100,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the first episode. We're going to have to wait for word of mouth to take off.
Yeah, sounds conservative. All right. Thank you to Nowhere Man Brewing, West Australian brewery.
Not our official sponsor. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Could be.
Could be.
Could be.
If you want to reach out to us, Nowhere Man, you know where to find us.
We're nowhere to be found. All right.
Thanks for listening, and we'll be here next week to review the second movie.
All right. See ya.
Thanks, everyone.